Good afternoon, good evening to all participants for joining us today. I think that we will just get started now as we continue to let more participants in through the waiting room because we have a very packed agenda and we don't want to lose out on any time. So a big warm welcome to today's webinar, which is hosted as part of the online week, organised by the Knowledge Centre for Sport and Physical Activity Netherlands. The webinar is co-hosted by TAFISA and the Knowledge Centre, and today we're going to focus on the physical activity habits of children and youth through the theme, It Takes a Community to Raise a Physically Active Child. So it's now time to start, but before we go any further, I would like to advise you that today's webinar is recorded. So if you do not wish to appear in the recording, please turn your camera off now. All of your microphones have been muted on entry, just to ensure a smoother running of the webinar. But if you wish to intervene with a comment or a question, it's very strongly recommended. We want to hear from you. We want to hear from your experiences. We want to hear your questions. So please make sure to utilize the chat function. We really encourage you to use the chat throughout the entire webinar. And following each intervention from our special guest speakers today, we will open the floor for questions from participants. Finally, I just ask that everyone changes their Zoom name to their first name, their surname, and their organization so that we know who's joining us here today. So that's enough housekeeping, and I would like to now officially kick off the webinar. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce TAFISA President, Professor Dr. Chang, who will give a few words of welcome today on behalf of the TAFISA Board of Directors.
Dear participants, it is my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, which is co-hosted by TAFISA and the Knowledge Center for Sports and Physical Activity. The theme of today's webinar is It Takes a Community to Raise a Physically Active Child. The webinar is organized as part of the Knowledge Center's Motor Skills Week and will focus on how to increase opportunities for children and youth to be more physically active. On behalf of the TAFISA Board of Directors, I would like to thank the Knowledge Center for Sports and Physical Activity for not only their long-standing partnership, but also their commitment to better the sports ball movement in the Netherlands and internationally. I'm delighted that we received more than 400 registrations for today's webinar from over 60 countries. That tells me that the topic is close to everyone's heart and remains a priority across the global sports ball movement. As well as partnering with the Knowledge Center, we are also joined by expert speakers from all corners of the world who will all share their knowledge and expertise on the importance of enhancing opportunities for youngsters to meet the recommended levels of the physical activity. I would like to extend a warm welcome and a special thank you to our guest speakers for their contribution to the webinar, which I am certain will be very well received. TAFISA and the Knowledge Center for Sports and Physical Activity cemented our partnership through the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding 2 years ago. Moreover, our partnership also brings back a great memories for me, as it was during the World Congress in Anstad, Netherlands, in 2013, hosted by our Dutch friends, when I was first elected president of TAFISA. The partnership between TAFISA and the Knowledge Center has continued on a positive path since this memorable occasion, with multiple successful collaborations across many different projects. Alongside the rest of the world, TAFISA has spent the last 18 months digitalizing as many of our activities as possible to ensure we can fulfill our mission to create a better world through sports by 2030 for the next generation to enjoy. Through digitalization and new technology, we are joined today by participants from across the world to share experiences and learn from one another. TAFISA is proud to offer a space that encourages international, cross-sectoral, cross-cultural collaboration. As a final note, I would like to thank all participants who have joined us today, as we believe that together we are stronger in our quest for a better world through sports for all. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, TAFISA President, for those very warm words of welcome. I would also like to extend a welcome to TAFISA Secretary General, Mr. Wolfgang Baumann, and TAFISA Vice President for the Americas, Ms. Catherine Ford, who are also present here today. I'm now going to pass the floor to Dr. Myrthe Bruning. Dr. Bruning is the Sports Policy Officer for the Ministry of Health, Welfare and Sport, Netherlands. Dr. Bruning, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Carrie, for the introduction and also indeed the very nice opening words of the president of TAFISA. Good afternoon to everybody, or at least the ones who are in some sort of similar time zone as I am. It can be good afternoon, good morning, whatever works for your situation. Indeed, I work as a policy officer at the Ministry of Health, Welfare and Sports at the Sport Department and specialized in youth. And I'm very happy to join this international session to gather so much input from all over the world. So this is also a nice moment to thank TAFISA and the Knowledge Center for Sports and Physical Activity Netherlands for hosting this session together, of organizing this session. And I would like to highlight the uniqueness of this Knowledge Center, as it is a center that brings together science, policy and practice about sports and physical activity. And as a ministry, we're very grateful to be able to use their input on all those three combined perspectives. So let me continue by painting a picture of the Dutch situation related to sports and physical activity. As probably applies to all of your situations, the global pandemic of the last 2 years has largely affected the way people exercise and are physically active. And research showed that from the Dutch people, 30 to 50% stated that they were less physical active last year. But besides that, there's also a group of 15% of the people, so it's way smaller, who stated that they were more physical active. And what this shows us that in the last year, the gap between physical active and physical less active people has widened. And this is a huge challenge for the next years for us. But what the pandemic also brought us is more awareness of the benefits of being healthy and being physical active. And last May, 5 Dutch ministries wrote together a policy report about an integral approach on how to stimulate being physical active throughout the day for all Dutch people. Because we believe in an integrated policy, so not only the sports department should be included, but also public space, also education, healthcare, the work environment, and more examples. But I will come back to this later. The session is about children, so let's now focus on our youth. And what we see in the Netherlands is that the motoric skills of children go down in the last couple of decades. And what's also mentioned in the Mission 2030 of TAFISA is that it should be okay to just play. which actually doesn't only hold for children, but should also apply for adults. But if for some reason in the last decades, we've seen play as some sort of waste of time. And this has led to a physical degradation, degradation in physical literacy. So what's important now is that children should be able to move more, but also should be able to exercise better. And now I come back to this integrated approach I was just talking about, why it's important that so many sectors work together and raise a physically active child together. Because if we take a look at the day of a child, we see that it visits school most of its day. So it's important that in this environment, it's not only about the actual physical education class, where a child learns to move properly, but also that it moves in the break sessions or in the mathematical classes. Because why should you be able to just sit on a chair all day if you can also learn how to do your math while jumping? Then what's also very unique for the Dutch situation is that for the primary school children, nearly 70%, so 70, goes to school by bike. That's something we are very proud of and also something we should keep stimulating. And if school's over, a child should be able to just play and do this in a nearby and challenging playground. And after that, also join a sports club together with its friends. So what you see in this description of a child's day, you see that it's not only the educational sector that's important, not only the sports club, but also, for example, traffic safety, infrastructure, urban planning. So what we see is that all sectors need to work together, and they need to do this on every level in order to stimulate being physically active for a child. So the challenge is how to connect to every sector. So this is my, let me finish my talk by this. And I'm very much looking forward to all the other speakers, renowned speakers, and see what their insights are. And let's together find out what are crucial factors in order to stimulate being physically active throughout the day for children. And let's act on a local level, national level, international level. And I think for that, this session is a great start. And as we say, it takes a community to raise a physically active child. Well, we're here with people from, I believe, over 60 different countries from all over the world. So that would be a perfect community to start with this exciting task, which is ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bruning, for those really wonderful and inspiring words of welcome. It's an absolute pleasure for us to have you here with us today. So I would just like to very briefly introduce myself and the other moderators who you'll be hearing from throughout today's webinar. My name is Kerry McDonald. I'm the Business Development and Fundraising Manager for TAFISA, and I'm joined by my friends and colleagues, Doreen Dijk, Senior Specialist for the Knowledge Centre for Sport for Physical Activity Netherlands, and Jacqueline Kronenberg, Manager of Public Affairs, Knowledge Centre for Sport and Physical Activity Netherlands. And Jacqueline, you will give very brief words of welcome now.
Yeah, thank you, Kerry. Oh, it's wonderful when a plan comes together. Really, Doreen and I thought about, we went wild and said, oh, could we have an international webinar about the topic of motoric skills? We have a whole week in the Netherlands, all seminars, 11 seminars about motoric skills this week. But could we have an international webinar and see where we are? We have so many participants from all over the world, and we have renowned speakers. And we are so glad to be able to do that together with TAFISA. Really, we are a member organization, but it feels much more like a member organization. And the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding that Mr. Hugo Chang mentioned, is really important for us. And this webinar is a sign that we really can continue our cooperation in a very good way. So, I would say, let's start with all the interesting perspectives that we can share together, and let's learn together.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Brilliant words there. So before I pass over to Doreen, we do have a very special request for all the participants today. We really would like to collect what you consider to be an important tip or an eye-opener that you learn in today's webinar. So again, we really encourage you to use the chat function, and please let us know about your top tip or your #1 learning or takeaway. Whatever that is, just let us know what that is, please. And we'll remind you again at the end of today's webinar. So I'm now going to pass over to Doreen for the first poll of today. So Doreen, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Carrie. Hello, everyone. Nice to see everyone, but I would like to get to know all of you a little bit better. And this is the reason why we added the poll today, because we are really interested in what kind of professional you are from your country. So you will see some questions in a minute, and hopefully you can answer these questions. So please have a look at the questions and answer the questions like where are you from? So the first question, you have already seen this. What continent are you from? So we see Europe is growing. Please write down where you are from. And we see the variety of people who are in the webinar now. It's lots of Europeans, probably because of the time. It's in the middle of the day now for us. Yes, thank you. I think everyone can see it. And there might be, yeah, still some people answering these questions. Yes, so every continent is present. That's good to see. I think it's good to go to the next question. Oh, everyone can see. The next question is about your profession. Are you a researcher, policymaker, practitioner, or something else? Please add your answer. We wait for the people to write down their answers. The practitioners are growing at the moment. Yes. 10 seconds to go before we see the results. Yeah, I think it's time to share the results. So you can see that the practitioners, this is really a big group within this group. And the others would be interesting as well. If you like to share what other kind of professional you are, please put it in the chat and let us know. And next question, please. Well, this is about how much exercise you have already been doing today. Because as you know, 30 minutes is the least you can do per day. But hopefully, yeah, I see the results coming in. Most of us say yes, fortunately. But of course, for the people who have just started the day, it might be a little bit more difficult. Let's share the results on these questions. Very good, 48% has done it his 30 minutes already. Okay, next question. That was the question we just had. Yeah, well, the other thing is, doing exercises is one thing, but to sit all day is not a good thing either. Unfortunately, there's a lot of sedentary behavior in the Netherlands at the moment. But let's see what's happening here. I see that 2 to 4 hours is growing quite fast, but we wait a couple of seconds more to be ready to, yeah, let's share the results again. 2 to 4 hours. So we have to change this. Hopefully we can do this within the seminar as well, the webinar, but you will see later on. So next question, please. The weather. What's the weather like in your country? As Dutch people, we are always complaining about the weather, but please let us know what the weather is in your country. And there are some questions, some answers below. Let's see, pleasant sunshine. Ah, interesting. Not that cold. Let's share the results again. Pleasant sunshine is winning in this, so that's good. We have a good day. And another question, please. Oh, this was the last. Yeah, I was already wondering. So good to know. Thanks for sharing your information on all these information you have within your own country. I think it's time to continue. Carrie, the floor is yours again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doreen. Thanks for getting everyone engaging and in getting everyone used to the poll function, because we will be using that throughout the webinar today. Now, we have slightly adjusted the programme, and now it's my absolute pleasure to introduce our first keynote speaker of the day, Dr. Jeff Simons, Professor of Kinesiology at California State University, East Bay. Specialising in the psychology of motor behaviour, Dr. Simons has nearly 40 years' experience bringing theory and research into practice across diverse populations, from inactive children to Olympic athletes. He's also served as a consultant and board director of the physical activity promotion nonprofit Blue Earth Foundation, located in Melbourne, Australia, for over 20 years. And Dr. Simons is currently residing in the San Francisco Bay Area of California. So Dr. Simons, first of all, I'd like to say thank you so much for joining us at such an early time in your day. It's a pleasure for us to have you here, and the floor is yours.
Fantastic. Thank you, Carrie. Let me share my, oops, sorry, I'm trying to share my screen here. And make sure that that is up. I do have slides today, and the slides, I'll try not to adhere to them too closely. I'd like to talk to you, but I do want the messages to be available to everyone, and so perhaps the writing on the slides helps you follow along with my logic as we go through. Please stop me if at some time I become either so excited that I'm speaking too quickly, or which is my way, or if there's something that's completely confusing. We're focusing today on community. And I really love the idea of the integral approach in that there's not one solution to the issues that we are all facing. And there's also not one group of people or one body, one singular body that's responsible for it. I think it is the entire community that's responsible for making a difference in physical activity around the world. And so I'll focus today on behavioral issues, the way around trying to create a sustainable change in the way that youth come to physical activity, children and youth, with always the vision forward to what children and youth become, which is adults and the next leaders. A few things to get us started that all of you know. I'm speaking to the people who know this, but I still want to create a foundation here. We live in an increasingly inactive world. Active lifestyles become optional, become a choice. There are so many different types of distractions, responsibilities, work-saving devices that make movement fairly optional. And so not only do we have to be able to provide opportunity for children and youth to be active, whether it's physical education or sport or just play, recreation, active transport, there's opportunity for that to happen. My area is particularly on behavior and motivation to behave. So this is, we need to have opportunity, but we also have to have the motivation to actually choose to move. If there are adequate opportunities, then what we're looking for in order to go beyond just a single class, a single sport session, a single dose of exercise, sustainable activity requires that the person themselves, the child themselves, must be motivated to go out and choose the activity, to choose to use the opportunities. Choosing becomes the key to sustainable physical activity over time. Choosing becomes the key to taking advantage of the opportunities that many of you are trying to provide in your local community. So here's the question for us today that I'd like to address, and that is, how can communities actually promote lifelong physical activity choices? And I choose to look at lifelong, even though we're focusing on children and youth, because I'm thinking about how does this sustain them? How do they go in a day-to-day through their childhood, through their youth, into their adulthood, choosing active lifestyles? And how does a community, whether it's local or international or global, how does a community help that come to be? And my answer today that I want to bring to you is that we sustain physical activity by fostering the intrinsic motivation within individuals, the personal motivation to be active and to choose activity. And this is what I want to spend a few minutes today talking about. Obviously, we only have a short period of time. I'm hoping this lights up your thoughts or reminds you of things that you already know. So I'm going to make the point today that communities themselves, the way in which a culture of people, a society of people, a community of people can actually foster and maintain intrinsic motivation within the individual. And what we know is that physical activity is seen by many people as a chore, difficult, hard work, something they're not good at, something that requires too much effort. It requires old technology, like a bike rather than an e-bike, as mentioned earlier. Physical activity is often seen as something that a person does not want to do. In fact, my physiology friends will say that biologically we are kind of pre-wired to be as lazy as possible to save our energy. So physical activity, and particularly exercise or active recreation, can be seen as a chore. But physical activity becomes intrinsically motivating, that is, something we would seek out and choose to do when our experiences with physical activity are satisfying, when they're enjoyable, when they are fulfilling, and when they feel like they're just a part of who you are. Now, I want to make a point that intrinsic motivation is not just enjoyment, fun, thrills, excitement. Intrinsic motivation is a sense that the activity or the choice that you make is a part of your life and something that you are drawn to do. Now, we have about 50 years of research and theory that on choice motivation. And I prefer the self-determination theory by Edward Deci and Richard Ryan. And there's tremendous research to say that that intrinsic motivation is fostered by our drive to go out and choose certain kinds of activities. And there are three broad basic needs. And these needs are beyond survival needs. These are beyond needs that are organic to us in terms of our just basic physical survival. They are the needs that we have in order to be fully human and to go out and explore life and to do life. And these three broad human needs are a need to be competent, to be capable, to feel like you can have an effect in the environment. in Edward Deasy's words, to be the origin of your life rather than a pawn to life. To be the one who chooses, that's autonomy. And then to belong to a group, belong to your social group, that's relatedness. To have friends, to be respected, to be loved, to be a part of. And we'll talk about these a little bit and how community can change this. But the source of our intrinsic motivation is that activities mean something to us. When communities can actually help people fulfill these needs, make it a part of individual needs, not because the community wants it, but because individual people want it, then physical activity becomes a sustainable choice. It's what people choose to do. So the role that community plays is not only to provide the opportunity, we put that to the side, but to foster and support the groundwork that allows the intrinsic motivation to grow in each individual person. So let's think about how that happens. Consider, and you can think about just in your own community, your own field, whether it's a sport, physical activity, recreation, active leisure, active transportation. Think about how is physical activity perceived by the people in the community? How is it delivered? What is valued? These are the questions to really step back and look at. Think about the fitness industry, for example. What tends to be valued? Spending lots of time in a gym or on exercise equipment, making a fit body, a body beautiful, having great capabilities, great physique. Those are the things that tend to get valued. How many people are devalued in that situation? Think about sport. And I know all of you here are thinking sport for all, but think about sport for real in your community. What is valued? The most highly competent, the best, the winning team, the person who arises, the star, the person who scores the goal, the person who is highly capable. How many people does that not include? And I can go on and on and on. Think about how is physical activity perceived in the communities in which you work? How is it delivered to people? What is the value? What is the objective that's given? Well, if it excludes a lot of people, guess what? Those people say physical activity is not for me. It is not a part of my life. It's not valuable. I don't feel welcome in physical activity, in the sport, in the gym. So creating a community culture that really stimulates and fosters the intrinsic motivation to be active, the choice to be active, has to value diverse kinds of activities, huge diversity in activities, huge diversity in objectives, perspectives that every single member of the community can attach to so that it feels like that is a part of me, that's something I find satisfying, enjoyable, fulfilling. It is who I am, and it's what I do. We have to go from a very narrow view of what is valued, a very narrow view of what a person should do, can do, is supposed to do, to a much broader humanistic view of where people might be physically active in their life and benefit from it. So what we have to do, according to the research then, if we want to increase intrinsic motivation, is we have to actually support those basic needs. This is where the theory comes, but then we have to talk about into practice. The theory is solid. Internationally, it's been very, very well established. Cross-culturally, it's been established. These are basic needs that people have in order to feel like they are a part of life and they're choosing life for themselves. So our community needs to be able to support all three of the basic needs that people have for choice behavior. The first thing, physical activity has to be for me. This is selfish, but this is what sustains. If it's for me, then I will go out and do it. Think of every single individual member of your community, whatever that community is physical activity, is sport, is fitness, is physical education, is that for them? And that needs to be something that is felt by the individual. So we have to think about what is competence, what is capability. Now, for some, this is the group we love, the people that already choose, they're healthy, they're fit, they enjoy, they are successful in whatever it is they're doing. But most people don't feel successful because they're not valued for what their capabilities are. How is this for them? How is this something that they can do? They feel competent. They feel like they learned something. They are capable of doing something, and it feels like they're valued for those capabilities that they have. So it needs to be for me. Otherwise, intrinsic motivation does not grow. It has to be about my preferences, and I have to have some autonomy in this. The word autonomy is very strong here. Is I engage because it's right for me. Autonomy does not necessarily mean I get whatever I want. What it is I get to engage because I choose to engage, and I have some say in what goes on. I can look at different opportunities and see things in different ways. If I want to play sport just for fun, I shouldn't have to be on the A team. I just play because it's fun to play. So that's personal choices. Now you'll notice, because these are personal needs, these first two are quite selfish, right? And this is one of the key points around self-determination theory, is that if we only had these needs of for me, my preferences, we would be quite chaotic. But human beings are social as well. And the third basic need we have in order to choose to engage is a sense of belonging. We want to belong. We want to be part of the community. We want people to engage with us. We want to be respected. We want to be valued. So our physical activity needs to be something that people feel they come in and they can belong. It socially connects them, whatever way that happens to be. And that's everything from the A team basketball, all the way to the child who has very few skills, but loves engaging and playing and being in the environment. It socially connects me. It makes me feel like I'm part of the community. If I'm doing things that other people do, it feels right. In my own local area, we have many hiking trails in the hills. And during COVID, what many people found is that going out and taking a walk in the hills not only was good for them, but they felt like they belonged with all those other people that went out and took a hike during the day, took a walk during the day. So belonging becomes part of it, and we need all three of these in an integral way. It has to be for the person, that they have some choices and they feel like they engage because it's something they want, and it creates a sense of belonging. So my point here is that if your community creates a culture in which a diversity of active lifestyles and active engagements, active participation can be valued by the community, it begins to be valued by all those members of the community, which stimulates their desire to take part and be part, to put down their TikTok videos and go out and engage with people and play physically. So our ideal, what would it mean to have an autonomy supporting community? to have a community that actually fosters intrinsic motivation and creates this sustainable trend in people choosing activity now, tomorrow, and through their life. The first thing we have to do is, of course, provide diverse opportunities. Sometimes that is public planning, having the park, having the playground, having the fields, having the open space, having the trails, having the gym, having the sport teams. You have to have diverse opportunities and a culture that accepts and celebrates physical activity in all kinds of forms, and that's accessible to everyone, that doesn't exclude, that embraces many different voices, many different styles, many ways of being part of healthy physical activity. We want to be able to offer both opportunities and perspectives, which is the education part. This is where the social part of physical literacy is learning that this can be a part of me. The psychological development is a perspective that all of us are physical human beings. Every single human being was meant to move. Not just some, not just the super capable, not just the Olympic athletes. Everyone was meant to move. Movement is for everybody. We have to foster that all the way. So by increasing our intrinsic motivations, this choice motivation, this desire to engage, to this feeling that physical activity is a part of me and what I do, and each day just, opportunity, as soon as an opportunity is there, it's something I would consider all the time. By increasing those intrinsic motivations, a strong autonomy supporting community would promote lifelong physical activity choices for everyone, for every child, for every youth, and then every adult. So I'll leave it there. That's my broad brush. Hopefully it creates some thought for everyone. I strongly believe that when we make what we're offering about others, about individuals, rather than about us and about our system and about our ideas of what other people should do, then we don't have to push physical activity. We simply provide it, guide it, and let it happen. Thoughts or discussion? I didn't time that, so I have no idea whether I did okay.
That was excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Simons, for a really, really insightful, inspiring, excellent first keynote of the day. Thank you. I'm just having a look at the chat to see what has come in. I mean, there seems to, I am conscious of the time, but maybe we can just ask one question now and then maybe come back to you a little bit later. I'm seeing in the chat that a lot of comments are referring to parents. Parents are the ones that are playing this important role and in motivating and encouraging children and young people to be physically active. And people are saying it begins at home and parents are children are copying their parents. But if this is what we focus on, then that would tell me that children that have parents or guardians that are not physically active or are not encouraging them to go out and play or undertake some sport and physical activity, then they won't have that intrinsic motivation. So for those children that are not growing up in households that have that physically active role model that can help them with this, building the elements for the motivation, what hope is there for those children and young people?
So that's an excellent question. Obviously, the perspectives and values in the home are strong. First of all, are the original place where children learn what is about them and what is for them and what is possible for them. All of us work in institutions, organizations that are trying to supplement what happens in the home. And for many children who come to physical education, to play, to sport, they're going to be influenced by the culture that exists there. So we need to take our part in creating the culture that redescribes what physical activity is all about. Many times I find myself trying to teach parents how to value physical activity without telling them to be physically active first. Rather than telling them they should be fitter, they should be active, is to change the perspective on what humans move. We are meant to move, and moving changes our life. So as professionals and practitioners out there in the world, what we need to do is have this attractive community that draws children to learn a different perspective on what physical activity means. If you have a sporting club that only values the top players, that tells everyone else that they are not, that they're not, that they're not good enough and they shouldn't be here. If you have sporting organization that has room for top players, but also has lovely openness to all kinds of abilities of people who just want to be there, then what you do is you say, well, there's a continuum of what you might do. So find your place in here, and we welcome you. And let's teach a different perspective on what physical activity, movement, sport, play is. So that's, we have to, as a community, we have to help support a culture that may or may not happen in the home.
Excellent. Thank you so much once again, Dr. Simons. Unfortunately, we will have to move on to another speaker now, but I would encourage people to keep the questions coming for you in the chat if you're able to stick around. And once again, thank you for a wonderful first keynote of today. So now I'd like to introduce our first panelist, Mr. Max Tamazawa, Managing Director of the Sasakawa Sports Foundation, Japan, where he has engaged in corporate planning and international relations since 2009. Mr. Tamazawa is also a board member of the TAFISA Japan and has been actively participating in a variety of TAFISA programs and events for more than 10 years. So Max, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Kerry. Can I share my slide, or are you going to share my slide?
We'll share it from this side.
Great. Wonderful. Okay. Can you hear me clearly? Okay. Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. My name is Max Tamazawa from Sasakawa Sports Foundation. Actually, I'm going to start my stopwatch here. I got only 10 minutes, right? We, Sasakawa Sports Foundation, is a Japanese think tank specialized in sports policies. And as a think tank, we do a lot of researches for making sport policy recommendations for the national or local government. Since 1993, every 2 years, we have been conducting the research called National Sports Life Survey, which measures the number of adult people aged 18 or over taking part in the sport and physical activities across Japan in terms of frequency, or duration, and intensity. The sample size is 3,000. Then we started conducting another research called the National Sports Life Survey of Young People in 2001 in order to know the trends of sport life of young people who are younger than 19 years old. After that, we added another research for age group of 4 to 9 years old, 2009. So finally, since 2017, the target age groups were changed to 4 to 11 and 12 to 21 years old. So today's my presentation is mainly based on those surveys and statistics. Yes, yeah, you see now that the first slide. Here, I'm introducing some trends of sports life of Japanese children and young people. The point of this slide here is the first, almost half of, almost half of the Japanese children aged 4 to 11 years old doing sport and exercise regularly. the latest results shows that 45% of child enjoying sports 7 times a week or more, and only 3% of them say that they don't do any sports activities at all. Second, however, the percentage of the non-sports group has become much bigger when they get older than 12 years old. So you can see more than 21% of those young people do not do any exercise or sport at all. So it means that 1 out of 5 young people do not enjoy any sports activities at all. But please remind that this number doesn't include physical education class, like a PE class. So exercise and sports activities at the PE classes are not included in this survey. And actually, the Japanese children and the young people who go to elementary schools, junior high, and high schools are taking PE classes regularly. So they regularly experience the sport and physical activities through those PE classes, no matter whether they like it or not. So I have to mention one more thing, that almost all Japanese schools have various kinds of sports clubs for their students after the school. So soccer club, a baseball club, or track and field, and tennis, or table tennis, or swimming, or anything. So these surveys count the sport activities by those sports clubs. So but anyway, the important fact here is the older the Japanese children get, the less they become sports lovers. Next slide, please. Yep. So this stat also shows that the older they become, the less they like exercising and sports. So for young people from 12 to 21 years old, more than 20% of them answered, I would say I do not like doing exercise and sports. So now everyone, is this problem or not? Okay, next, please. I mentioned earlier that Japanese children and young people are taking PE classes. This is just a chart to compare the PE classes in Japan with other European countries. So you can see that Japanese children are taking PE classes regularly. So they touch the sports and exercise through those PE classes. Next slide. Yes, so what is the issue in Japan? So this slide is dealing with the issue of sports clubs at schools. As I mentioned before, many Japanese schools, especially junior high and high school, have a variety of sports clubs as after-school activities. Many students over age 13, means over junior high school students, enroll all those sports clubs. However, there are some issues around the sports clubs at schools. The issues are such as declining the birth rate in a young population make sports clubs at schools difficult to maintain, or immature instructors, or physical punishment, or too much voluntary work for teachers. Actually, I don't know if you can believe or not, but the instructors, or like coaches or head coaches of those sports clubs at the schools are teachers. And usually they are not PE teachers, like mathematics or science or history teachers. For example, I was enrolled at the basketball club at junior high, and the head coach was my science teacher. And actually, he was a good coach though. So those teachers work as a volunteer head coaches or instructors at the sports clubs. So this is one of the hot issues now in Japan. So the formation of sports clubs at schools is promoted by the government. I put a list of the resolutions which the Japanese national government is now offering, but because of the time, I'm not gonna go through those resolutions, but we can maybe come back after that. But anyway, so now the Japanese government is now tackling on this reformation of sports clubs at the school. Next, please. And yeah, this slide shows another issue about the Japanese children and young people who do not like exercise and sports. The Japanese government too takes this issue as a problem. So this chart shows that more than 22% of children and young people don't like sports. And since I explained this already, I'm not going to go the details. Then you can come back after during the Q&A sessions here. But anyway, the government is also trying to make the children like the sport and exercise more. Next slide, please. So not only the Japanese government, of course, that we, Sasakawa Sports Foundation, is now trying our best to tackle on this issue. We have made a partnership agreement with a small Japanese municipality called Kakuda City in northern part of Japan. Based on the agreement with the city, we have composed a consortium to discuss and create effective and holistic sports policies for the city's citizens. The consortium is composed of many different experts from different sectors, such as municipality government itself, private sport clubs, schools, local university or sport tourism organization, or the operator of public sports facility, and so on. For the children in Kakuda City, the consortium decided to adopt the program so-called Active Child Program, developed by the Japan Sports Association, which is another member of TAFISA Japan. They have expertise to develop this kind of program for children. And this program is mainly targeting on preschool children, like age 0 to 5 or 6, and their parents and also child care workers. The instructors of this active child program go to those kindergarten and nursery schools in the city and teach those children and their parents and child care workers how to move their body with fun. The instructors are not teaching the students importance of motor skill, but the fun of moving their bodies more. So after implementing this program, 95% of children answered that they would like to do it again. And 100% of child care workers answered that they would like to continue the program. And the parents also, 96% of them answered that they got inspired and motivated a lot to let their kids more, move their bodies a lot. So I believe this success of the Kakuda City can be applied to other municipalities in Japan and maybe for other cities in other countries. So yeah, now I got 10 minutes. So this is all about it. Thank you very much for listening.
Excellent. Thank you so much for a wonderful contribution there, Max. That was very, very insightful. I can see that I do have some questions in the chat here, and I encourage all participants to write any questions or comments they have also. So the first question I'm seeing is from Apasha Mahadev from India, who says, how does physical activity support the community and school? Research proves that if your kid is physically active, they do better at school. They've written a multitude of physical activity and many benefits that come from children being physically active. And I guess the question we can ask you, Max, is alongside the statistics you're gathering at the moment, are you also gathering statistics on the positive benefits of the children being physically active and how that feeds into their wider lives in school, the community, etc.?
Right. Yeah. Yes. Actually, but basically, this survey is focusing on their sports life, what kind of sports they do, how long they do, or how intense they do. And besides those questions, we do sometimes ask them how they like the sports and why they don't like the sports or exercise, and they mention many different reasons. So then we can analyze how we can change, their situation or their policies to let them like more the sport and exercise. Yes, so we do a variety of questions, but basically we're asking them about their sports lives. Yes.
Thanks, Max. A second question I see that has been sent to me is asking if you break down the data at all. So when you're looking at the percentage of children that are not, they don't enjoy the sport, or they're the large increase of children that are dropping out in sports, are you looking at the demographics of who those children are, the gender, the socioeconomic background, etc.?
Right. Yeah. Good point. Yes, of course. The older they get, the busier they get. They have to do many things. They have to study more, or the challenging. I mean, they have to challenge themselves to get a better education, or basically just they will not have enough time to do some exercise or sports, of course. But still, I think it's about their motivation. If they got some extra time, they're gonna choose sport or exercise, or they're gonna choose TV games, or I don't know what other options. But what we want to do is I direct them to stick to enjoying sport and exercise when they get spare time. Yeah, I know. Yeah, there are many social aspects or social economic the reasons for them not to choose sports and exercises, but I would like to analyze but why they don't choose their sport and exercise other than other options. Yes.
Thank you very much, Max. And I think that's what we're all gathered here for today, to work out how we, as members of the Global Sport for All movement, can make sport, exercise, physical activity, movement play the #1 choice. Because of course we have all these other factors in the external environment that we're competing with. So it's a tough job, but I'm sure that we can manage.
Exactly.
Okay. Yep. Max, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time for questions.
Thank you. Yeah.
Pleasure.
Thank you for giving this opportunity. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. So now it's time for our Energizer, but beforehand, I just wanted to let everyone know that we just had to shift the schedule around today, and we're going to have Professor Dr. Richard Bailey will be presenting after the panel today. So Richard is with us, he will be presenting, so anyone that's come here to listen to what I'm sure is going to be an excellent keynote, make sure you stick around. But now it's my absolute pleasure to pass over to Doreen, who's going to be taking us through an Energizer. So Doreen, it's all on you.
Yes, thank you, Carrie. Well, the problem is we are sitting for an hour already and maybe longer today. So this is the reason why we are going to dance with each other. And the thing is, you have to put your photo on your screen on. So please show yourself, stand up. That's the first thing you have to do. So stand up, turn your camera on, and we really would like to see you. I'm going to put the music on. It only takes 3 or 4 minutes. And what you have to do is dance with us. We're gonna show you the moves, and you will hear the music within a very short time. Thank you very much. Great done.
Wow, I'm out of breath now. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. Jacqueline, Doreen, thank you to everyone for dancing. I even saw a dog make an appearance there. That was wonderful. Thank you for energizing us. Oh, so now that everyone should be feeling a lot warmer, I'm absolutely delighted to introduce our second panelist of today, Ms. Tinka Leksovec, representing the TAFISA-led, co-funded by the European Commission, Female Leaders of Tomorrow project. Tinka is one of the 20 FLOT mentees. She's recently completed a master's degree in kinesiology, and she wants to continue her education in doctoral studies in the same subject. She's been involved in sports since her 7th year, and she's been a rhythmic gymnastics coach for the last 10 years. So Tinka, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Carrie. So on the behalf of all the participants in this presentation, I would like to warmly greet you and thank you for giving us the opportunity to express our thoughts on how, as the future leaders of tomorrow, we think we can increase physical activity in children and young people. So I would kindly ask for the slides as well. Okay, yes. Okay, and the next one. Thank you. So performing physical activity or participating in various sports gives you a lot of positive things, and these things will stay with you for the rest of your life. For example, it teaches you hard work, discipline, perseverance, self-respect, it boosts your self-confidence, self-esteem. Above all, it's very important from a social and health point of view, especially from physical and mental health. And that's why it's so imperative that we really succeed in increasing physical activity levels in children and young people. So next slide. Who we are. We are people who come from different countries, different continents, and different cultures. But we have only one very significant thing in common, and that's it, the goal that we want to become leaders and create changes in the future and thus change in the world for the better. My name is Tinka, I'm from Slovenia. I have been a coach in rhythmic gymnastics for about 10 years now, and I'm working with the girls who are 5 years old and also with the girls who are 18 years old, so basically from kids to teenagers. So then there is Dianne, she's from Angola and she's playing chess for 13 years. And there is also Lara, she's from Germany. She's a girls football coach and coordinator and also coach for school teams in Berlin. She has two big passions, working with the kids and doing sports. So we met through the FLOT Female Leaders of Tomorrow project, which is run by TAFISA. And it's a very interesting project because throughout we met new people from different cultures. We exchange our experience with sports and involving people in physical activities. All of us are coming from the background, which is intertwined with sports and physical activity. During our youth, we all got involved in sports, where we developed a passion for being physically active, and we want to pass this passion on to the world. And that's why we are still very much involved in this area, but in different roles. So like a coach or a leader or aid to organization and administration. Next slide, please. So together, we think that we combine 5 unique superpowers with which we can help to engage and encourage children and youth to be active. As a FLOT mentees, we think that the first superpower is difference. Because we are coming from different backgrounds, we can really see different perspectives on all the barriers that are getting in the way of children being physically active. For example, I personally would never think that something such as having a safe means of transport to the training facilities and back can play such an important role. But throughout talking with the other mentees who come from different countries, I learned that this can actually be a huge problem, because I come from a main city in Slovenia, but Slovenia is a very small country with very little people. So that's why it's actually quite safe to walk on the streets, even for children. But when I was talking with the mentees who are coming, who are living in the bigger cities, they actually said that no, they have problems and they don't even like to walk at night. So the second superpower is creating a safe space. Children are very good about sensing where can they get creative and comfortable. Therefore, it's very important to provide them with a space where children will feel accepted, no matter their disabilities, social economical status of parents, religion, and language. Sports is a very powerful tool which can give you a feeling of belonging somewhere, regardless of your differences. Very important superpower is also making children and youth love sports and develop a strong passion for being physically active, and thus thinking that it's important for our health and well-being. If we succeed in that, then children will grow up in adults who love being physically active. The fourth superpower is lead by example. Children observe and imitate people around. This doesn't need to be only family members or best friends. It could be teachers, the grocery shop worker, or a guy at the corner playing guitar. For their physical and mental health, every child needs to have someone around doing sports. Remember, they copy what you do. It's not about bringing them to Olympia, but showing them a healthy lifestyle. And the last one, which is very important to us as a future leaders, is that all the youth from different backgrounds have a person on top in the organization or in national teams that actually represent them. Because when they quit sport, we still want them to stay in sport, but in different roles, as we state, coaches or leaders. Next slide. So under the TAFISA guidelines, we are working on projects which are combining these superpowers. For example, Lara's project, she built a project Young Athletes to Ablas. Ablas is a Turkish word for big sister. And she actually created a role models in every neighborhood. So the kids have weekly trainings of football, and these trainings are coached by their Ablas, so big sisters. And they not only do sports, but they have a safe space to be themselves, share their thoughts, and they can find someone to talk to, just like a big sister, because, you know, sometimes it's easier to talk to your peers and not to your parents. So my project does not actually relate directly to children, but I try to influence them indirectly throughout the parents. Parents are the ones who will be the first to teach children values and habits, whether bad or good. Therefore, I wanted to teach adults why it's important to be physically active and how to correctly exercise, so they will be able to transfer this knowledge to their children. We even encourage them to bring children with them to the workout sessions. And now Irene will tell us something about her project, and I think she will also show us a video.
Hello, thank you, Tinka. I am Medinea from Angola, and I want to show my video about the project. So, Carrie, can you put the play, please? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Why are youth-led and peer-to-peer approaches so important? Although parents greatly influence the behavior of children from kindergarten onwards, their behavior is also influenced by peers and slightly older children, especially in today's world of social networks like Instagram, TikTok. And the young influencers play a very important role. The youth is very easy to manage, and it's also very easy to manipulate them. Therefore, it's important that they follow the right influencer who will encourage them to live healthy and that doing sport is cool. For example, the young gold winner at the Olympics, Momiji Nishia, she's very great influence on the young. Also, peer-to-peer approach is very important because if there is going to be a strong social environment, children will want to stay in sports because they will love to come to hang out with their friends and play sports together. Usually it happens, like I saw in one of the commentary, that there is one boy or a girl who is playing some sports, and then she started to talk about that in kindergarten or school, and then all of her friends want to come as well on this training. So next slide, please. So at the end, we think that we need to work as a community to make even more progress in engaging children in physical activity. We need to look at the bigger picture and all the barriers that stops children from being physically active. But the most important thing is to start leading by example, being physically active ourselves and try to transfer our passion on younger generations. As Sir Gandhi said, you must be the change you wish to see in the world. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much to you, Tinka and Arinia. And I must apologize, Arinia, I wasn't aware you were joining us today, so just let me introduce you to all of the participants. Arinia Gabriel is from Angola and one of the other FLOT mentees. Arinia studied engineer of telecommunications, and as you might have noticed from her video, she is the CEO and a chess teacher of Brilho Sapiens, Arinia? You can correct me on the pronunciation. Not only does Arinia love sport and challenges, but she's also very active within her communities. So thank you very much to both of you for your contribution. It was a very inspiring and insightful presentation, and it's great for us to see how you as youth and as the next generation of Sport for All leaders, how you're able to use your superpowers, as you so brilliantly put it. I think I have a question for you both, actually, and then I'll have a look at the chat and see if any come in. How can we, as members of the Global Sport for All movement, support you in your quest to encourage your peers and encourage children to be physically active? What can we do to support you and ensure that you can carry out this role to the best of your ability?
Actually, I think you are already doing a lot by giving us these kind of platforms where we can share our ideas, because usually sometimes it's hard, like when you're talking with somebody who is in charge, they are not thinking, oh, they are young, they don't know anything, and they don't take us seriously. So I think already giving us this kind of platforms is a huge step forward in supporting us.
Thank you, Tinka. Arinia, do you have anything to add?
I'm just teacher, and in chess is a little bit difficult to speak about the physical activities. So we only can motivate the guys to doing sports, and the physical activities as a consequence to be healthy and good to win, to think better. Yes, it's just a consequence to join.
Exactly, Irinea. And I can see a comment from Professor Darlene Kluka, who has quite rightly said that chess is a great intellectual activity. And one of the reasons why we wanted Irinea to share this amazing project that she is conducting is to show that there's different ways that we can engage with children and young people, especially those that are really hard to reach and are in environments that we're maybe not necessarily maneuvering in ourselves. And once we can introduce one activity to them, it makes it a little bit, we create that pathway of introducing opportunities for sport and physical activity. I can't see any other questions in the chat for now. So once again, Tinka, Irinea, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your wisdom with us. It was an absolute pleasure. So now it's time to introduce our final panelist of the day, Ms. Dianne Scholte, who, having graduated with a master's degree in socio-spatial planning and health promotion, is now working as a specialist in sports infrastructure and physical activity friendly environment at the Knowledge Centre for Sports and Physical Activity. So Dianne, the floor is all yours.
Yes, thank you, Carrie. You can start the presentation. Yes, thank you. So today I will introduce the physical activity friendly environment model to you. Next slide, please. So globally, we are not only in a COVID-19 pandemic, but also in a physical inactivity pandemic. So 1/4 of adults worldwide and 4 in 5 adolescents worldwide are insufficiently active. And on the question why so many people are insufficiently physically active is no single answer. However, one important factor in this is the environment that you live in. So this image shows that the safe walking distance decreased from 6 miles in 1919 to only 300 yards in 2011. So this means that the children are not allowed to walk independently to other locations outside of these distances, mostly because of their parents who feel that the environment is not safe for them to walk or to play in. Next slide, please. So the environment is very important for physical activity. Urban design matters. So badly designed spaces, which we can see on the left side of this slide, may create feelings of unsafety and are therefore not encouraging to become physically active. For example, very small bicycle lanes next to water, bicycle or walking paths that's with obstacles or that just stop in the middle of nowhere. On the other hand, spaces that are designed specifically for walking, cycling, or other forms of activity, which you can see on the right side of this slide, can be stimulating for physical activity. For example, the traffic sign that we see here shows a street specifically designed for cyclists. So cars are allowed, but cyclists are the priority. So a physical activity friendly environment. Can you click, please? Yes, thank you. A physical activity friendly environment is an environment that facilitates, stimulates, and challenges people to be active, to play, to exercise, or to do sports. Next slide, please. So one important element of a physical activity friendly environment is the hardware, which is the physical infrastructure that is present in the environment. And it is important that this is accessible to everyone. So this consists of 5 elements that make up the abbreviation of sports. First, next slide, please. Yes, thank you. First, we have sports accommodations, such as indoor sports centers, swimming pools, gyms, but it can also be vacant spaces or buildings that are temporarily used as sports venues. For example, there is a square which is used as a sports field, and this image shows a highway with a football field on top of it. And second, playground and play areas, such as public playgrounds, schoolyards, and skate parks, but also crowd courts. Third, open green spaces, such as parks. Fourth are routes and pathways, such as sidewalks, bicycle and walking paths, and horse trails. Here we see a route specifically designed for children. And fifth, tourist and recreational outdoor areas, such as forests and beaches. So a second element of a fiscal activity-friendly environment is the software, which refers to the activities, communication, and coaching involved. And this consists of 3 elements that make up the abbreviation of ABC. So the A stands for activities and interventions, such as sport events, tournaments organized by sports clubs, by community sport coaches, by schools, by municipalities, etc. And the B stands for briefing and communication. And this includes campaigns, websites, or applications that inform people about the different options for physical activity. This can be both information about different events or information about how to use, for example, outdoor fitness equipment. And then the C stands for coaching, training, and assistance. And this includes the effort of, for example, community sport coaches, social workers, childcare centers, trainers, volunteers that train, coach, and assist in the activities and interventions that are organized. Then another important element of a physical activity-friendly environment is the orgware. Next slide, yeah, thank you. This concerns the organizational processes behind the hardware and software. And 5 elements make up the abbreviation of MOVES. So first we have management and maintenance. Next slide, please. Yes, thank you. So management and maintenance is about how the locations and routes are maintained, but also how this maintenance is managed and how activities are managed. Second, ownership and finance, which is about how the hardware and software are financed. And for citizens to participate, it is also important to create a sense of ownership. Third, we have vision and policy. So a fiscal activity-friendly environment is not a temporary investment. Most of the return requires a long-term perspective. So it is therefore important to formulate a strategic and integral vision for a healthy or an active city, which includes the goals for a fiscal activity-friendly environment. So fourth, evaluation and monitoring. So it is important to regularly check the usage of sports accommodations, of playgrounds, of routes. Like, do they still fit with the users' needs and wishes? Does the intervention work? For whom does it work, and when and why? And fifth, synergy, collaboration, and citizen participation. So it is important to take the users' wishes and needs into account. Local citizens can often pinpoint bottlenecks and opportunities, so it is important to involve them in the process. Next slide, please. So these 3 elements of the hardware, software, and orgware come together in this model that we have developed. As you can see, the abbreviations of sport, which was the hardware, the ABC, which was the software, and the moves, which was the orgware, come together into the middle of the model, and that's where the people are. So only when these 3 elements complement each other, they actually facilitate, stimulate, and challenge people to be physically active. Next slide, please. But before you start working on a fiscal activity-friendly environment, it is important to realize that there is a difference between the objective and subjective environmental characteristics. So the objective environment consists of that what is actually present in public space, such as the proximity to recreational facilities, the length of sidewalks, the length of bicycle paths, density of street lighting, traffic safety. And the subjective environment consists of the perceptions that people have about public space, such as the perceived distance to facilities, perceived safety of an area, or the aesthetic quality. And these, these objective and subjective environmental characteristics are not the same. So you need to consider both of them. For example, you cannot increase the number of playgrounds only because it does not meet a certain guideline or a certain standard. You also have to check whether the citizens, and especially children in this case, feel like there should become more playgrounds in their neighborhood, but also where they should be located, what they should look like, what is needed to make the playground, but also the route to the playground safe for them. So then I come to my final message. Next slide, please. So there is not one good fiscally active. There is not one good fiscal activity-friendly environment. There is no blueprint for it. So a fiscal activity-friendly environment is always context-dependent. So the citizens, the culture, the landscape, and the opportunities in an area define what is needed to facilitate and stimulate people in that area to become active. So it's all about the people. You have to work bottom up. So every project that aims to create a physical activity-friendly environment should start from a sense of urgency seen and felt by the locals. So you first need to know what the local needs and wishes are before you start intervening in an area. And like we've seen in the model, the hardware, software, and hardware have to complement each other. Only then the people are stimulated, facilitated, and encouraged to become physically active. So this is when sport ABC moves people. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that really, really interesting presentation, Dianne. I can see that we do have one question that's come in that I'll maybe just ask you very quickly before I pass over to Jacqueline for the poll. And the question is relation to which department of the government is working on these elements. Is it the sport department, transportation, urban planning? Because they've written that in their country, in Japan, one of the issues is the collaboration of those departments working together.
That's a very good question. I think it is very important that when you work on a physical activity-friendly environment, you have to work together with all the different departments. It's not just the sports department, it's not just the urban planning department or the health department. It's just they have to work together because, well, the people from the sports departments have specific knowledge, people from the health, from urban planning. But if they work independently, then it's not going to work. So you have to cooperate with each other in order to design these places.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Again, thank you for a very, very interesting presentation. It's much appreciated. And now I would like to pass over to Jacqueline for the poll.
Yeah, it will be me, Carrie, sorry. Sorry, but no problem. We have some poll questions because we are very curious what, again, the audience is thinking about the subject Dianne just presented. So we have a first question. For a better physical activity-friendly environment for children in my city or region, I would invest €1 million on, if you have to make a decision, infrastructure. Well, everyone goes quicker than me. Physical activity, stimulating activities, better collaboration with citizens, working bottom up, a combination of all of the above. Well, the ones were raising on top, but now the below one is growing. I think it's nice to share the results. Please share the results. Yeah, a combination of all above. Interesting to know what people in the world think about this. Question 2 in the poll. Do you pay attention within your country, of course, to the subjective environment, the perceptions of people, Dianne explained us, in your planning and activities? Please give us your answers. Let's see, it's still changing. Yeah, I think we can share the results. The answer is yes of most of the people. That's good to know for us as well. And the last question. Do you pay attention to the subjective environment? Oh, we did already have this one. Can you think of an example of a physical activity-friendly environment in your city or region? And you don't have to say yes if it's actually no. Yeah, no is growing a little bit as well. Let's see. Well, very important, of course. Yeah, let's share the results. It's a yes of most of the people. Well, thank you. I think it's time to go on with the program because we are running out a little bit of time. So, Carrie, I would give the word back to you.
Thank you so much, Doreen. Much appreciated. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our second.
I think we can't hear you, Carrie.
Can you hear me now? Yes? Perfect.
Yes, I do.
Oh, good. I thought I'd lost you there. So it's my pleasure to introduce our second keynote speaker and our final speaker of today, Professor Dr. Richard Bailey, Research Director at the University of Nottingham, Malaysia. Richard's got an extensive background in education and sport as a teacher, teacher trainer, coach, coach trainer, researcher, lecturer, professor, and he's influenced policy and practice at both national and international level. Following Richard's intervention, we will open the floor for a few minutes for some questions and answers, and we do have a final poll of today also, so make sure that you're writing any questions and comments in the chat. Without further ado, Richard, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Kerry. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. I'm quite a long way away, so I just wanted to check. Well, good evening, everyone. It's nearly 11 o'clock here in the evening. I hope you're all well. I was supposed to be at the beginning, but it worked out quite well, I think, because some of the topics I'm going to be talking about have already been touched on by some of the previous contributions. I've been making a note of, I don't know if you can see this is a very bad audio-visual aid, but I've been making a note of some of the key points that seem to be repeated, and I think that's probably because there's an element of truth in those. That's there's a consensus within the scientific community about some of the challenges facing us. What I'd like to do is take a step back and ask some more fundamental questions about the challenges facing us, because most of the research, in fact, almost all of the research and almost all of the policy initiatives for the promotion of physical activity have been specific, focused, and unsuccessful. We should be completely honest with this. We have invested billions in physical activity promotion around the world, billions. And if it was an investment so far, I suspect it wouldn't be seen as a good investment, apart from, of course, the unequal contribution to welfare, particularly for children. But in terms of impact, most initiatives are not particularly successful. And I want to ask some questions about why that is. One way of thinking about it might be this. There's an old Irish story about somebody walking in the countryside in Ireland, and they stop a farmer and say, "Can you tell me which way to Dublin?" And the farmer thinks for a minute and says, "Yeah, I wouldn't start from here." The reality confronting us is that I don't think any of us would start from here if we're trying to promote physical activity. The built environment, as we've just heard, is not activity friendly. Schools are positively unhealthy, and workplaces likewise. So we wouldn't start from here. And okay, there's lots of reasons for that. The Industrial Revolution, change has taken place, it's led to urbanization and so on. But the reality is that we're confronted with an environment that is generally activity unfriendly. So, for example, I'm now in Malaysia, where they adopt a US model of transport, which means if you don't have a car, you're in trouble. There's a name for cyclists in Kuala Lumpur. They're called organ donors. It's generally a very bad idea to cycle around the city centre because there are no cycle lanes. There's huge amounts of traffic and pollution. We wouldn't start from there. I will explain the title. I think generally speaking, being a weird person myself, I think it's a pretty good thing to be, but I mean the weird in the anthropological sense. So we can change the slide, please. We'll see if this works. Anthropologists, including Joseph Henrich, has come up with this categorization of the societies and cultures in which most of us live. They are weird, Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. Now, weird cultures generally dominate world economies. The big economies of Europe, Germany, France, UK, of Asia, Japan, and Korea, excuse me, Singapore, and increasingly other cultures as well. are taking on a weird environment. But of course, it is also weird in the literal sense, because it's unhealthy, unnecessary, damaging. Weird schools, for example, reward students who are sedentary. Sedentary behaviour in almost every country in the world is characteristic of a good student, sitting still, sitting quietly, and so on. Despite the evidence that movement is inherently linked to brain function, brain health, and academic performance. Students who are fitter, physically fitter, generally perform better than students who are physically unfit. A recent study, the most comprehensive study ever undertaken in the world, was led by the Amsterdam Medical School in the Netherlands, and I was lucky to be a part of that. And we found that looking at all of the available evidence and giving weight for the quality of information, students who are physically active have a significant advantage in terms of things like mathematics performance. I'd add another point. Studies that have increased physical activities in schools, I have one of two results. Either they improve academic performance, or they have no effect. There is no study of which I'm aware that has shown that significantly increasing physical activity up to 25, 26% has any harmful effects on educational performance. So in Asia, as we've heard from our colleague from Japan, there is enormous pressure for parents to push their kids through school so they go to a good university and then to a good job. But the irony is, if physical activity was a more substantial part of the curriculum, many of those students would perform better than those students who are stuck at home doing hour upon hour of homework. So we do have a clash between what the evidence is saying for the good of children, students, in fact, all of us, and the way that we seem to have structured our society around sedentary recreation, sedentary study, sedentary working environments, and so on. Weird societies are financially successful and in almost every other way disastrous. Can you move forward one, please? If you want to find out more about this, there is a rather marvellous, if large and imposing book about, from an anthropologist, the weirdest people in the world, in which the author, hi Mika, the author outlines in extraordinary detail the reason why Western industrialized societies have succeeded economically. It's interesting that the book does not look at health, apart from mental health, which he argues this is a mentally unhealthy environment. I think the time is right for researchers to start looking at the physical consequences of weird countries. Next slide, please. Sorry, I have a slight cold. Let's just look at some of the evidence. There is a general and continuous reduction in habitual physical activity. COVID, ironically, reversed this briefly because sports clubs closed. In many countries, there was an increase in walking and cycling. But my prediction is that it's starting to work out, it will return, so that in developing countries, walking, particularly cycling to some extent, is the main source of physical activity. In industrialized countries, organized clubs are the main source of physical activity. Now, the problem with that is that health benefits seem to be associated with both forms. Organized sports, competitive activities seem to be very supportive of increasing moderate to vigorous physical activity. But we also need low-level physical activity to build up endurance, to combat obesity, and so on. I've seen a spelling mistake, apologies for that. But there is a general increase in participation in the developed world in organized activities. And as countries like Malaysia and Indonesia and other countries in Southeast Asia are moving towards developed status, habitual physical activity is on the decline. inactivity has become normalized. Most countries in Europe have a model of physical activity intervention based on the assumption that there is a decline in physical activity around 12 or 13 years of age, particularly among girls. And therefore they've targeted that age group. So there's lots of activities to increase physical activity for teenage girls and things like that. Well, clearly that is a problem. But if you look at direct measures of physical activity, because most of this evidence is from questionnaires, which, you know, think about it yourself, how many of us are completely honest in this poll about our physical activity or whatever the question would be. If you look at direct measures of physical activity, the decline in physical activity probably does not begin at 12 or 13. It begins at 6. So a number of studies carried out at the University of Glasgow have analysed all of the available accelerometer data. This is measures that directly measure movement. And it seems to be that 6 years of age is when the problem begins. Now, what happens at 6 years of age? I hesitate to say schooling begins around that age. It seems to be that children's levels of habitual physical activity drop in a way that coincides with their entry into school. That is a cause for extreme concern. And of course, increases in a whole host of life-shortening and life-threatening diseases. Next slide, next click forward, please. In fact, 2, I think it is. Yeah, so I think we can call these weird diseases. Type 2 diabetes, certain cancers, coronary heart disease, arteriosclerosis, and certain types of mental health problems seem to be associated with our weird lifestyles. Our lifestyles are making us sick. Now, we could reverse this. We could say it is true that physical activity reduces the risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes. Physical activity is more potent as a preventative and a treatment for stress, anxiety, and depression. That's all true. So we could look at the positive side of that, and that seems to be a perfectly reasonable thing to do. But I think for my purposes, I want to focus on the fact that we are living in societies, we're living in environments that are literally killing us. Next slide, please. There is a phrase which you may or may not know, so I will tell you. It is like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Titanic, you may know, is the great ship that sailed from Liverpool to New York, and it hit an iceberg and sunk. And as the boat was sinking, members of the crew were tidying up the chairs. It is a metaphor for focusing on trivial and unimportant matters when there is an urgent problem to address. And I think we can, as a profession, as a group, be considered guilty of this. We have been rearranging the deck chairs, tinkering with the curriculum. There was a meeting, an advisory meeting of the European Union, HEPA, Health Enhancing Physical Activity Group, of which I was a member, and we were debating whether we could make a case for 1 hour more of physical education a week. Well, the World Health Organization suggests that that would be 5 hours physical activity to have health benefits. That's almost certainly not accurate. Studies from Scandinavia suggest we're probably talking about 3 hours a day of physical activity to really gather health benefits. So if we're in this situation where we're in an environment that is unhealthy and we're nowhere near our target of physical activity, we have to think far more radically. We have to think much more big. Because the great thing about thinking big is that even if you fail, you still can achieve some remarkable things. If you think small and you fail, you can achieve nothing. But if we start thinking not just about cycle paths or extra clubs, but think about how we can build physical activity and other health practices into our environment as a normal part of living. Then we're shifting the attention to where the problem really lies. Otherwise, we're just rearranging deck chairs. Next slide, please. What can we do? Well, here's three ideas. I'm doing some work at the moment with the European Union and colleagues in Europe on active schools, but you could say cities, you could say workplaces. When I think of an active school, I do not mean schools in which there is more activity. I mean schools that are grounded in physical activity. The conception we have in the developed world, in our weird countries, thanks to the Enlightenment from France, thanks to the Catholic Church from Italy, thanks to a whole host of influences, is that human beings are brains that carry around bits of meat, our bodies. And everything we know about neuroscience, everything we know about how people learn suggests that we are a whole individual in which the mind and the body are inseparable, or inseparable, if I'm going to be correct. The body and the mind are inseparable. We do not learn with our brain, we learn with our whole person. And if that's true, what are we thinking about with our current conception of schools? Sit down, sit quietly, don't move. If we have physical activity, it's physical education on average 20 minutes twice a week. Virtually no point. Active schools are not schools with more activity. Active schools are schools in which activity is at the heart. And active cities and active workplaces would need to be the same. Because the great thing about this is not that it reduces coronary heart disease or diabetes or depression. Yes, it does that. But people also work better. They study better, they're happier. What are we trying to achieve with our schools and cities and places? Is it just income generation? Well, okay, it works. But what about happiness, fulfillment, satisfaction? Because that is not working at the moment. We need to start early. As I said, if it is true, and I think it is, that it's age 6 is the drop-off point, then we've got to start getting parents involved, communities involved. We've got to start creating a whole community built around the healthy development of every individual child. And physical activity, or let's put it another way, movement is a part of that. You know, there's one of my favorite books was written by a Norwegian writer called Bohr. And he said, there's child culture and school culture. And child culture is characterized by play and fun and movement and social interaction. And school culture is characterized by sitting still, sitting quietly, doing as you're told, and following the dictates of someone else. Well, is it possible that we could integrate those two agendas, recognizing that the raw material, the human being coming into the school, does not have school culture? They have child culture, and that is about movement and play and fun and being with friends and learning. Nudging, this is from behavioral economics, and essentially it says, if we think big, that's our goal, we move towards our goal. And then nudging is not just transforming everything at once, but making it easier for people to take the healthy option. I've said, if I decided to cycle to my university here, it would be a religious experience for me, because I think I would see God. I would have it would be terrifying. Well, probably for me, it'd be the devil, but that's a different matter. We have no cycle paths, we have no pavements, we have cars driving at extreme speeds. So let's start making it easier for people to cycle, easier for people to walk, making it safer. Women generally are significantly less likely to walk at night than men. We need to make places lighter, more secure, safer. Because if we don't do that, none of these achievements will be realized. So nudging is just making it easier. If you go to an airport or a mall, almost always the moving escalator will be seen before the stairs. In where I live, you don't see the stairs at all. They're hidden behind the doors. Let's change that. Let's make taking the stairs the easiest thing to do. Make it easier and safer than the unhealthy option. Next one, please. I think I'm nearly done. Right. So I really just wanted to kind of think about the mindset of what we're talking about. Yeah, sure. There's lots of great examples, and I'm inspired by the things I've heard. But unless we target massive change to our ambitions, we're just going to be rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Richard. I can see all the really positive comments that have come in about what a fantastic presentation that was. So really, it's an absolute pleasure to have you join us as the keynote speaker today. Thank you. And I know it's exceptionally late for you, so it means a lot for us. Just due to the time restrictions, I think I can pass over to Jacqueline now to do the poll, and then I'll have a quick look and see if any questions come in, and then we will be wrapping up. So Jacqueline, the floor is yours.
Yes, let's see the poll, the first poll question. And of course, a question about schools, because Richard told us a lot about it. Are schools healthy places for children? What do you think? They usually are, they are sometimes are, they rarely are, or they never are. What do you think? Well, I think that we can end the poll. Yeah. So now we see the results. So I think reality hits us. They sometimes are, and sometimes they rarely are. Well, okay, we have a lot to think about that. And the next poll question, please. Apart from parents, who is most responsible for keeping children active? Are they schools, communities, governments, sports clubs, or others? What do you think? This is quite interesting. Now we have several opinions. Okay, let's end the poll. And we see schools win, but communities and governments are also very important. Thank you. And the last question, it was the last question. Last poll, please. Yeah, so a weird presentation has a weird ending in poll. England invented football, so should they have a 2-goal head start in every game? Agree? Yes, great idea. Yes, but give them more goals. Yes, and teams like Brazil, Germany, Holland, and Spain should be forced to play with buckets on their heads. Okay, I think we have quite an audience who's in for a laugh. So, yeah, okay. So let's end this poll. And the winner is the bucket on our heads. Thank you. Okay. Carrie, the floor is yours again.
Thank you so much. And once again, thank you so much to you, Richard. I feel like you only scratched the surface with your keynote, and I wish we had more time to really dig deeper into some of the really important comments that you made. But I think a lot of us will go away thinking about what you've said today, and it will make us really take a long, hard look within and the environment that we're within also. So Richard, thank you so much. Thank you, Jacqueline. Unfortunately, we are almost out of time for today. Jacqueline, I think you just wanted to have a reminder about the eye-opener before we wrap up.
Yes, this week is in the Netherlands the Week of Motor Skills. And we received this envelope of our junior minister, Mr. Blokhuis, Maybe we have a picture of it also. Yes, you share the screen. Oh, there's a lot to see. Yeah, see here. You see our CEO handing this envelope to our junior minister. It was the other way around because we received it. And what's the meaning of that? In all seminars that we organized this week, so all 11, we want one big insight. So what was the eye opener of today? Please put it in the chat and we will select the one that will be in this envelope. And on Friday, we will give it back to our ministry. And so we can share the thoughts with our ministry, and hopefully in the Netherlands, we'll come to much more good policies for physical activity.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. And once again, thank you so much to everyone. Thank you to our brilliant expert speakers that joined us from all corners of the world today. Thank you to you, the participants, for not only your attendance, but your active contribution via the polls and the comments and the questions that you left. Really, it's been an absolutely fantastic webinar, and I really hope that you've enjoyed it as much as we have. Just to let you know that all participants will receive a very, very short survey following the webinar today, and we'd really appreciate if you just take 1 minute to complete it so we know what's worked well and what we can improve on for next time. And the recording will also be available for all participants. So before I pass the floor to Doreen, who's going to say some concluding remarks on behalf of the Knowledge Centre, I just want to thank everyone once again for joining us today. Doreen, the floor is all yours.
Yes, thank you, Carrie. I would like to thank this community, like the people who were available, who were here in the audience, but also as speakers or keynotes. I would like to thank you, and I would love to share, exchange information with you. So this is a community where we can learn from, where we get, well, many inspirations from and exchanges from. So please give us the knowledge of the whole world. We love this. And TAFISA, thank you for this cooperation as well, working together, organizing these great speakers and keynotes. And hopefully we will have a very nice webinar next time again. And well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.